We've had a huge interest in this webinar, so we're really excited today to welcome so many people from around Europe and around the world. And I think that we'll kick things off and we'll officially get started. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Kes McCormick, and I'm a professor at the University of Agricultural Sciences, Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and I'll be your moderator today. And as I just alluded to, we're really excited about this webinar. This webinar is brought to you by the UNP Plus project. And our capacity building program on urban nature plans. And the sheer numbers of people that are joining us today, I think, suggest just how many people are interested in nature in cities and in particular urban nature plans. So today we're going to explore what we call the UNP Plus Framework, which has been developed or is in development by the UNP Plus project. And we're going to go through how cities can use this framework to design and deliver really effective and ambitious urban nature plans. So we have a really simple agenda today. We have 3 big items on the agenda. The first is we're going to have a presentation from ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability, which will present this framework. And we have Anna and Callie presenting this framework, which is very much in the making. So we're opening this space to present, what we've developed so far, and we're really looking forward to your feedback, comments, and questions to develop it further. Then we'll be having an interview with the city of Barcelona. Barcelona's worked a great deal with urban nature and urban nature plans, and we really want to bring in the voice and experience of a city in Europe, which can tell us a lot about their insights and lessons learned. And then we're going to be using the chat function heavily. So please, as we go, write your questions in, comments, feedback, ideas, and so on. We'll be jumping into the chat as well to provide the responses and other questions and comments. And we'll be finishing with kind of a Q&A session altogether where we'll be picking out some of the key questions to respond to and discuss further. So before we get started with our presentation, I would just like to say 3 things. The big picture for urban nature plans. The first is that urban nature plans are really exciting for cities and for Europe. They're an enormous opportunity to bring nature into cities in new and ambitious ways. Number 2, the business case for biodiversity has never been stronger. It's growing stronger and louder all the time. We know that biodiversity is a key to humanity, to biodiversity itself and ecosystems, and to having healthy and thriving cities. And finally, we know that the commitment of government to resilience and adaptation remains very, very high. No matter what you hear from around the world, climate change is here and it's coming, and we need to have resilient cities. So, without further ado, it's great to see so many people popping into the meeting. Please use the chat function as we go, and I'm going to hand it over to our presentation from ICLEI to Anna and Callie. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kes. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Bruin. I am a senior expert in biodiversity and nature-based solutions at ICLEI Europe, and I'm really happy to be part of this webinar team. Thanks so much, Kes. We also have Rosanna and Julia supporting on tech and questions, so if anything comes up, just please drop it into the chat. And what I just want to say is Kelly and I are really happy to be here presenting what we've been working on. And ICLEI has been collaborating on this topic for the last 5 years with different organizations. And what we're sharing today is really an intensive collaborative effort with the Urban Nature Plans Plus Consortium, which includes the Politecnico di Milano, University of Helsinki, University of East London, Trinity College Dublin, Horizon NUA, European Forestry Institute. So this is really a collaborative effort between research and the cities that we're working with. So while Kelly and I have the honor of presenting it, it certainly isn't our work alone.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, exactly. So I'm Kelly Baldwin-Hyde, an expert on the biodiversity and nature-based solutions team at ICLEI Europe. And as Anna mentioned, the Urban Nature Plan Framework has been a hugely collaborative effort, and we're super pleased to present it to you today. Next slide, please. So we will focus our presentation in 3 parts. The first is the origin of urban nature plans and how they were first developed. Then we'll move into the many reasons why urban nature plans are important. And finally, and maybe most importantly, an explanation of what exactly urban nature plans are. Next slide.
Thanks, Kelly. So the urban nature plans have their roots in the Biodiversity 2030 strategy, which creates the regulatory framework for the necessity of what was then called urban greening plans. That's what they were called in 2020, and since 2024, they've been changed to urban nature plans. You can go to the next slide. What I find particularly appealing about urban nature plans framework is that it was developed as a call to action from this regulatory framework and further developed based on input from cities. So it's being called for by the Commission, but it is cities that are shaping it. And since early 2021, ICLE has been engaged in the development process for the Urban Nature Plans Guidance and Toolkit, which has been partially published on the European Commission's Urban Nature platform. And this was a collaborative effort between ICLE, Eurocities, and DG Environment. And to do this, we drew from a number of key publications and incorporated input from over 100 key stakeholders, including 40 municipalities who were on varying scales of bringing nature back into cities and planning for urban nature throughout Europe. The input from these consultation workshops directly impacted the development of the framework, and this direct input from cities is continuing through a few processes in the UNP Plus project. So I don't know if anybody's in the room who was involved in that initial process, but go ahead and drop your name of your city or say hello in the chat if you were. I know the city of Mannheim was very involved in those initial consultation meetings. We can go to the next slide. And as the framework and understanding of urban nature plans has developed, so has the regulatory landscape. And now with the adoption of the nature restoration regulation and the development of national restoration plans in member states, for Article 8 on the Nature Restoration Regulation Reference Portal, I will not be saying that 5 times fast, lists urban nature plans as important materials to assist with the development and implementation of the national restoration plans. So it's recommended materials associated with UNPs and for the development of the national restoration plans that there are these local urban nature plans. And the NRR, the Nature Restoration Regulation, calls for these plans at the member state level as mechanisms to meet the regulation targets. And they should be submitted this year in September. And they're intended to align with regulation targets and other national plans with the ultimate goal of increasing the level of ambition for biodiversity restoration. They will include quantification and mapping of the areas to be restored and a comprehensive list of planned and restoration measures, timeline, and financing strategies. And UNPs can act as the local complement to these national plans. So we can go to the next slide. In the Urban Nature Plans Plus project, we are exploring more specifically how urban nature plans can really be a mainstreaming tool to support the nature restoration regulation, climate city contracts, so that's associated with the city's mission, and the regional resilience journeys that cities are also embarking on that's more closely related to the adaptation mission. So urban nature plans aren't just implementation tools, they're instruments through which municipalities can reinterpret and prioritize, govern, and measure biodiversity policy within their own political and institutional realities. So it isn't a prescribed process, but it's a process that is adaptable to the political and geographic reality of where a city is located. And what we've been learning and hearing is how cities are understanding and framing biodiversity locally, and co-creation processes can help link nature and biodiversity with other priorities like health, climate, and equity to ensure that it really is a cross-cutting and cross-departmental planning agenda that includes biodiversity and nature. And these UNPs can be a practical entry point for cities to operationalize these national and EU targets and to align with policy recommendations and mechanisms. So like the city's mission, like the adaptation mission. And the targets that municipalities and regions might set and the actions may be distributed across multiple plans. They could be centralized in one plan. In any case, it requires this cross-departmental coordination and is more about embedding governance for biodiversity and nature more than it is about having one plan in place. So UNPs can also help make biodiversity visible, regardless of which plan it is located in, to policymakers and residents through indicators and metrics, and appropriately communicating to different stakeholders. So they can support this policy alignment, and they do require some institutional data stewardship. If we go to the next slide. So I understand urban nature plans in three ways. I understand them as a framework, as a process, and as a product. So as I was just describing, they help formalize a city's commitment to biodiversity and urban nature. They can bridge gaps across departments and topics, such as climate, health, mobility, the built environment. They are flexible, meaning that cities may engage with them differently depending on the planning to date, depending on what type of plans are already in place, green infrastructure plans, resilience plans, climate plans, depending how much nature is embedded already, as well as the geographical and cultural context. So ultimately, urban nature plans should enable possibilities for integrating nature into urban areas, and that might look different in different places. As a strategic local framework, they help cities systematically deliver and sustain urban nature for people, biodiversity, and climate resilience. This implies, again, this integrated approach to policy management and to making green and blue infrastructure more cohesive. As a process, it is based on the ISO 37101 standard for sustainable communities. And as a process, it's non-linear. So you'll see a beautiful visual of a flower in a moment, and it's cyclical. It is a process. There are steps 1 to 10, but cities might enter it at different points, depending on how much planning has already been done, how much action already taken. You might enter it at step 1 and go sequentially to step 2. A city might enter it at step 3 and then jump to step 6. So it really is intended to be adaptable and not add too much of an additional burden to the local municipalities. At the basis, though, what's really important is co-creation, and that there is this guidance and milestones to help cities see where they are on this path in this process. As a product, Urban Nature Plan includes a communication, education, and awareness strategy, increased local capacities, and established opportunities for mainstreaming nature, and some combination of strategic planning documents with a visual representation of how nature is embedded into plans in the city, if it is not in one plan. And we have some examples, so this you'll see. What a UNP must have is interdepartmental buy-in, consideration of the city structure, and alignment between various local, regional, and national plans. It can help cities work on green and blue infrastructure across sectors, guide through processes, and can highlight blind spots, is what we're hearing from the cities we've been working on. Things that, oh, we thought we knew about this, and oh, we hadn't quite considered this, to overcome this departmentalization. So what they aren't is they're not intended to be a document produced at a certain point of time that lives on a shelf. We have enough of those. Of course, the challenge is always capacities in different departments to really work across departments. Staff limitations and silos, but through the UNP Plus framework, we have developed some strategies and pathways to address these challenges. Kelly, I hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. So we all know that planning processes and instruments are complex. There are many variables to consider. Urban nature plans came to be because cities asked for them. They asked for a planning process that could bridge strategic and operational priorities, could incorporate big ideas and ambitious goals that cut across departments and governance levels, that could offer clear operational guidance via structured methodology, but that could also provide space for continuous reflection and feedback loops that are needed when you're learning by doing. So the Urban Nature Plan framework is first informed by practice. And through the UNP Plus project and its many partners, that grounding in practice has connected and informed science and policy. So we often talk about how science informs policy, which then informs practice. In this case, we're starting with practice. We brought in the researchers, and now we're informing and hopefully influencing policy at the city all the way up to the EU level. So the framework articulates this process. And through the UNP Plus project, we're adding in support structures like capacity building, like this webinar, and other core components for cities to be successful in the process. Next slide, please. So here's a look at the UNP process methodology, which is broken down into phases and milestones. Phase 1 is focused on preparation. Phase 2 shifts to action planning. And finally, Phase 3 focuses on implementation and monitoring. The milestones, which you can see on the left there, well, my left, anchor progress within each phase and signal when a city is ready to move forward or to deepen work in the UNP process. So they translate the broader phases into concrete, verifiable shifts in governance, planning, and implementation. For cities, this type of planning process may seem familiar, and this is by design. The UNP process is based on, as Anna said, the ISO 37101 standard for sustainable communities. It's nonlinear, it's cyclical, and it has a foundation of co-creation with guidance and milestones. So how the UNP process is applied in practice is a bit different because it's meant to point you in the direction of the appropriate starting point. Again, this process is nonlinear and cyclical. So this means that a city may not, and very often does not, start at step 1 and follow the steps all the way to the end to step 10. The framework includes several key elements, which are the foundational components of a strong urban nature plan. They describe what needs to be in place for a UNP to be robust and effective. And milestones are the signals of that progress that show a city has meaningfully established or advanced a key element. So for example, in the first phase of the process, the key elements are political commitment, cross-departmental governance, and co-creation with stakeholders. So if a city has those elements in place, they can check that first milestone off the list and begin with step 4 of the process. Next slide, please. So here's, again, a closer look at the 10 steps in the process. So you may be wondering, well, how do we know where to start as a municipality? How do we know where we are? To help you answer this question, we developed with our partners the self-assessment questionnaire, which is meant to be filled out with colleagues from multiple departments. The self-assessment questionnaire is designed to help you understand your starting point, your baseline, and to check which key elements may already be in place. In practice, this process will help cities assess where they stand and prioritize the actions and capacity building needs, and really importantly, help align any existing plans or strategies or projects under one coherent approach. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's give some concrete examples or practical on the ground examples. So let's look at 2 of the UNP Plus cities. So just for reference, the UNP Plus project features 5 cities. We have 2 lighthouse or leading cities, and that's Barcelona and Paris. We're lucky to have Barcelona with us today, among other UNP Plus cities, and 3 greening cities, and that includes Belgrade, Mannheim, and Burgas. The city of Mannheim already had strong governance and planning integration through their local Green Deal team. They had already embedded nature and climate and spatial policies. So Mannheim, therefore, could check the first milestone and focus their attention and their priorities on establishing indicators, ongoing monitoring, and continuous learning. So in Burgas, for example, they have several active greening and coastal projects and many other strong initiatives. But there's also a lot of potential for mainstreaming and integrating nature into existing policies across the municipality. So the point is, the process will be different for everyone. And this planning design, the UNP, supports this. So next slide, please. Now we will hear from one of our wonderful lighthouse cities, Barcelona. So over to you, Kes.
Fantastic, Anna and Kelly. I can see there are people dropping in all the time. I think we're over 100 people now, which is great. You did a fantastic job to compact so much of what we've been doing in the UNP Plus project into a small space of time. people, as I would just say it again, I'm going to repeat myself many times. Please write questions in the chat. A lot of people were asking if they'd have access to the recording and to the slides. Yes, we will definitely give you access to the recording. The slides or other materials, there's lots of those available through our website and so on. So we're definitely producing an enormous amount of materials you can get access to learn about urban nature plans, and particularly these experiences from the cities. I think Callie said it, or Anna as well. The project really builds from, the practical experiences of cities, and that's what's just so important in this type of work. People like me who are scientists, researchers, can talk a lot about these things, but until you get your feet on the ground and your hands a bit dirty in the cities, you don't really know what urban nature is. So we're really pleased now to be able to speak with Barcelona. Mark, is Mark in the audience somewhere? Hopefully.
No case. I will do the presentation, the question.
Okay, we have Adrian instead. Adrian, you're a very good replacement. You know Barcelona fairly well. Adrian's been part of the UNP Plus project since the very beginning. I think you may be able to introduce yourself a little bit, but it's really great to have this possibility to have a bit of a conversation about the city of Barcelona and what's happening in Barcelona. But let's jump to a first question, which I'm just going to throw at you right now. Who are you, Adrian, and what do you do?
Yes, I am Adrian. I'm working in Barcelona Regional. We are now representing the city of Barcelona in this UNP Plus project. And of course, for me, it's a pleasure to be here and try to explain a bit more about our approach, about participation in this process, because for us, it was an incredible opportunity to do this assessment, to do this work with different cities, with Paris, with Mannheim. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, look, it's great to have you here. And so what we thought we'd do is we just have a bit of a conversation, a bit of an interview style, and where we just throw a few questions at you and to get some of your responses. And again, you can write in the chat as we're going if you hear things that you'd like to ask more about, or if you've got a specific question for Barcelona, please pop it in the chat. So let's kick off here. So Barcelona started with a biodiversity plan. So can you give us a bit of an introduction to what is this biodiversity plan, or what has that done for the city of Barcelona?
Yes, of course. So 15 years ago, we started with the biodiversity plan. But this plan focused basically only in increasing the greenery. But now with our current nature plan 2030 that we implemented in the 2021, we started to thinking more in another kind of topics, not only in increasing the greening. So I try to do more for the city. For example, try to change this way of manage the trees, the green, or for example, the naturalization of the city. So as it's important now with this plan. So I think now with our natural plan, the different objectives or goals for the city are quite better and different than the old one. Yeah. So now it's more focused not only in the green, so in naturalization, in biodiversity. So in different ways.
And so in terms of this biodiversity plan, which is like a kind of a self-assessment or an assessment of the situation for biodiversity in the city of Barcelona, it's always a good question to ask this one, but were there any surprises? Were there things that popped up that you weren't expecting to see, or that you learned from such kind of assessment of biodiversity?
Yes, of course. At the beginning, when we start in the project, we start to thinking about how we can improve our plan using this framework or this process. So we started with the reflexive monitoring approach, and of course we detect a lot of lags or gaps in our plan, because it's the first time that we implementing this kind of assessment. So general assessment, not only in parts, like for example communication or vision. Not with this assessment, you can see a general vision of the plan, and for us was very positive and useful to know, because now we start thinking about the future, about the new plan, and we can use this information for that. Of course, yes. For us, it was the best. So try to do this general assessment of the implementation of the plan. Yes.
So as you're saying, I mean, it obviously helped you to identify these kind of gaps in the current strategies and how you might improve that. You mentioned just now reflexive monitoring, and I wonder if I can just put you on the spot and ask you just to explain briefly, what is reflexive monitoring? This was not in our question, so I'm just throwing one out at you. But what do you mean when you say reflexive monitoring?
Yes, in my own words, because it's a interesting question. So in my own words, is try to detect, to reflect about each step of the process regarding the vision, the communication, so the 10 steps, and you can detect the gaps, the lag, the critical point that you have, and the positive things to share with cities. So both, not only the negative things. So, and with this evaluation, with this assessment, you can detect what is now struggling for the city, for you, for the city, for the department, for example. And with this assessment, we detect, for example, some problem with our internal structure. For example, because we have in the city, we have around 4 or 5 people only for the implementation. And for example, this is positive because now we know that maybe we need to be more people to the implementation. Or for example, the baseline. It's the first time that we start with trying to do this biodiversity baseline, or the communication between the different departments. Now we have this separated, and now we try to have more communication, not only with the biodiversity department, with others, like for example public space or for example health. So because nature is more than biodiversity, is people, is nature, is soil, is vegetation, is not only green. So with this assessment, for example, we detect that because our natural plan, I didn't explain before, our natural plan has 100 action, and I think it's too much to have a lot of action. And now we reflect for the future to have less action, but more realistic. So I think this kind of topics you can detect through this reflexive monitoring. And I say before, so it's very interesting to have this global vision of the plan, because sometimes when you are in the implementation of the plan of the city, of the different urban transformation, you don't I can say it's not easy to detect these kind of things if you don't try to do the assessment. So the reflexive monitoring for us, it was a big opportunity.
Yeah, no, look, it's really good reflections. This element of reflexive monitoring is something that we've been applying within the UNP Plus project, and we actually have quite a few materials around what it is, how you apply it, the lessons learned, and so on. But it's great to hear these kinds of direct experiences from a city like Barcelona. You mentioned like 100 actions, and like you said, that you're already talking about kind of lessons learned about that was perhaps too many actions. Do you think you could just highlight like one of those actions? I mean, what type of actions does like the city of Barcelona take in these types of plans? Is there one that you could just talk about for a moment?
No, action. There are specific actions, for example, increasing the green in the city. This is the first one, for example, but there are a lot of action regarding the communication, try to put more biodiversity structure in the city. For example, regarding the communication, try to communicate, try to involve the citizen in the care of the city. For example, is another one. Communication regarding for example, the website. For example, we have a very interesting atlas, biodiversity atlas. Is a platform where in the website you can check you can check the species through the different neighborhoods with description, photos, more than 3,000 species. So this action try to be implemented, but now some of them are very difficult for reach. And yes, for that reason, we try to do for the future more realistic plan with less action, but more easy to reach. I think so.
No, it's an excellent reflection I think you're making here. There's a few questions and comments kind of popping up, and I'd just like to grab one of them because I think that it's a pretty nice and kind of question, which is how has Barcelona managed to maintain its urban nature goals, efforts, and kind of monitoring during changes to like city mayors or other political changes in the city level? So I suppose the question is, how do you have these kind of long-term strategies and actions when other things around us are shifting, particularly political leaders and so on?
Yes. So there are a lot of questions in one.
I know.
Yeah, regarding, for example, first, regarding the management is of course is a challenge for Barcelona because we need a lot of budget, a lot of efforts, economic efforts, in order to do the best as possible the management. And now the management is we have a local budgeting because it's a public company that manage the green in the city. But of course, we know that we need more money for that, and maybe we started. Is it one of the action of the plan is started to thinking about how can the city get more budget for the management, because with the last drought condition we had a lot of problems with trees, and we spent a lot of money because if you want to maintain the ecosystem survey of the greenery in city, you need to put more money in the table. That means that we need to thinking about how can we start with this. We're thinking about budgeting, finance, and this is finance and budgeting is another important part of this framework UNP Plus. So try to get more budget for the manage and for the implementation of the plan, of course. And this is the first question regarding the management, but there are another one, no?
Well, I have some other questions. I have plenty of questions. You're leading into a really good discussion here. I mean, leading back to the kind of the financing for urban nature plans. And I think you highlighted a point just there, which is really good to lift up again about the funding is kind of needed to implement greening in cities, but then also the management and stewardship of greening and urban nature in cities is also very important. And this kind of leads us to this point, like, so where is the city of Barcelona today with its urban nature plan, which you've kind of alluded to already a bit, and how can you see this UNP Plus framework kind of guiding the next steps in the work in Barcelona?
Yes, of course. For example, we are now in the middle of our implementation because we start with this plan in 2021, and now we are in the middle of the implementation. On is the perfect moment to do the balance, to do the evaluation, on thinking about the future, of course. And with this process, with this framework, with this with the process, we start to structure the new one, or thinking about this. And I think we can use this process for the future, because if we want to have, if we want to learn about the thing that struggled in the past, and try to have a more ambitious plan or more realistic plan, is important to achieve this kind of things. Of course, for us, it's very important to reach this test in order to guide for the next step. Next step for us is thinking about the new plan or thinking about the future, because taking into account more challenges in the city. Climate change, drought condition in the future now is not the problem, but maybe we can think that it's not is possible that we can have again this condition. Or, for example, try to include the people, the citizen, in the care of the city. The communication is important to the people. So this kind of topic, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of highlighting also these pretty significant issues of a changing climate and what that means: increasing heat, less water or too much water, and then all the kinds of issues around human health and well-being within cities, which are also just as important. And just like one other, I mean, you've already started to talk about this a little bit, but I mean, are there other kind of like practical advice you would give to other cities in Europe, based on kind of lessons learned from Barcelona and in particular kind of coming into this UNP plus framework, which was just presented by Anna and Kelly? I mean, what kind of advice could you give other cities? And it can be very simple or it can be very complex. You can choose. But what types of things would you tell other cities to do or to not do?
Yes, for example, in our perspective in Barcelona, for example, try to have not a lot of action or in the action plan, for example, that I said before, or regarding, for example, this internal structure, try to involve more departments, not only one in the implementation of the plan. This is very important for local context. Regarding, for example, so we have some positive or advice for in each step. For example, regarding in the previous step, when you try to include the people, so we did a lot of co-creation process with people, and I think our way to do this process was amazing, because we include more than 100 people in the previous step, 100 organizations, university, local companies, citizens. We have a decision platform, and with this platform, the people can participate in the plan with action, with worries, with ideas. And I think these kind of things, and these things are included in the framework. So our positive thing, our learn action for other cities, So, but regarding the try to have less action, the communication, have our own communication plan, I think is very important. And involve the citizens in the previous step with this engagement through platforms is necessary for have a realistic and local plan.
Yeah, look, there's lots of great advice there. There's several questions here related to this type of advice, like
Really?
the easiest and the hardest, which I think you kind of just went through now. But there's another question here, which I'll just kind of grab as well, which is following on a little bit from kind of the financing and the funding for urban nature and cities. And it is kind of, you might say, the elephant in the room. Who's paying for all of this nature in cities? And we have a question here, kind of, have you considered private sponsorship of urban green spaces for supporting maintenance? So not privatization of access,
Yeah, of course.
but more
Yeah.
some kind of sponsorship model, or how is it that we can engage, or how is it that the city of Barcelona tries to engage the private sector and private property holders and so on of land and properties, so that they are also part of greening the city?
Yeah, of course. This topic is one of our action. Try to include this sponsor in the city, but at the moment we start to thinking about this. Try to have benchmark, try to have a better benchmarking, how other cities are implementing these kind of things. But at the moment we manage with own budgeting our green in the city. But of course, for Barcelona, it's a challenge. It's a real problem. Not a problem. It's a real issue. Try to reach to get budget for example, not for sponsor. For example, we starting with urban shades. We can use different advertisement in this structure in order to finance a part of the manage, because with this this is a lot of part of the total amount that you need, but it's a good way to start. But of course, I think it's positive because we include this topic in our action plan. So that means that we know but at the moment, we manage with our local budget the green in the city.
Yeah, look, it's a topic which I think is a challenge for all cities
of course.
in Europe and around the world, but it's also, I think, a challenge that now that is shifting a bit because businesses and so on, of course, have an interest in the livability of cities. If they want people to come and work in their businesses and be part of them, they want the livability of cities to be quite high. So this can create a real driver for businesses to be engaging in things like you talked about, like shading and urban forests and so on like that. But it is it is a big step that needs to kind of take place.
Total agree, Kes.
I think my colleagues here, I'm just going to bring in it. Rosanna, Kelly, Anna, you're sitting here patiently watching these questions kind of pop in. Would any of you like to raise, I'm probably missing multiple questions here, which are appearing in the chat. Would any of you like to raise one of those questions or any thoughts that you have that you'd like to come back to based on what Adrian's been talking about? You're all nodding, so you're looking very enthusiastic to talk. Who would like to go first?
I can start. I like this great question from Susanna in the chat about data tracking and data tracking for resilience in climate change events that have recently hit Spain. So do you have any historic data from Barcelona that could inform other cities that are becoming less resilient to these events? So I think this could come back to the indicators that you're tracking, how you're monitoring things and things like that. So any thoughts you have on that would be really interesting.
Yes, thank you for the question. Of course, we are now trying to have this evaluation of some indicators. Of course, indicators is an important part of the framework, UNP framework. And of course, we spend a lot of budget for tracking this indicator. In the case of Barcelona, more related to heat, to climate change, to, for example, number of days of heat waves in Barcelona or rainings, for example. Of course, we try to have this data per year, but sometimes it's difficult because you need to have a lot of budget for that. But of course, we are tracking these indicators. But also regarding heat, regarding climate change, yes, we are, and biodiversity also, the number of species of butterfly or birds, for example, we try to have this evaluation because if we want to reach this biodiversity strategy, that means that you need to know exactly what is happening with your species in Barcelona, in the city. And of course, it's important. And for that, you need to implement this kind of studies. And we collaborate with local association that they are in charge of this project regarding the indicators. Yes. The monitoring of the indicators.
Yeah, look, it's such an important topic as well, the monitoring and having some sense of kind of informed decision making. Adrian, I'm going to give you a break from it. We've got some other UNP Plus cities here with us today. As was mentioned, we have 5 cities in the project. Don't go away, Adrian. You're going to come back in a moment. And the city of Paris is calling. I wonder if we can unmute Celeste. Celeste works at the City of Paris, and the City of Paris is also doing some pretty wonderful and amazing things with urban nature. I think many of us who have been to Paris know that it's a city of gardens and parks, but they're working quite a lot on kind of bringing in more nature to the cities. So I wonder if we have Celeste here. I think she is somewhere in this audience. She is here. Fantastic. What's going on in Paris? What's your work around kind of financing urban nature in the city of Paris?
Well, traditionally, we are like Barcelona. We handle almost all of the production chain ourselves, from the production of plants to the design of gardens and urban greening plots to the actual management of our trees and gardens. That's what we do. But more and more, and so that was financed out of the city budget, and that was it. But because we are greening at such a fast pace, we also need to diversify a little bit, and we are looking at different sources of income or different types of financing schemes. The first one is the fact that the city of Paris borrows directly on financial markets. So we now emit directly green bonds. So this is one of the first steps that were taken, and that means that we also have a certification of our accounts and everything. So this was like a financial mechanism that we put in place. A second one that we do with our water company is that we actually have a system of payments for ecosystemic services, where it's quite straightforward in the end. We pay farmers that work on top of water catchment areas for them to remain organic or move to a organic way of production. So this means that we save money because then we don't have to clean up the water from the pesticides. So this is a second avenue. A third one is looking more and more at philanthropies. So we created this new Paris 2050 funds, where we are trying to raise money from private companies to finance ecological transition, because we know that the green infrastructure that we put, when we create new parks, it costs to create, and then it costs to maintain, and it creates a lot of value, but not value for the city. So not directly. It creates a lot of value also for companies. It creates value for homeowners. We are trying to look at like how we can put everyone at contribution. Obviously, taxpayers already contribute, but there are other schemes that we are looking at. And I had a fourth idea, but I think I lost it. So just to tell you, yes, we are looking at different ways of financing. It's relatively new, and we are not at scale yet. But yes, we are also wondering how we're going to maintain this infrastructure in the long term, because it's not just a doing, it's not just a building, it's also the management for them to be efficient.
No, but it's great. It's great inputs. Can I throw another question at you, Celeste and Adrian, to both of you? This is a longer question, and it's from Latvia. About municipalities. You can see it in the chat. It's just here right now. But this kind of idea around, how ideas and suggestions, like how to measure the impact of kind of flood and heat risks. How do you know how big a risk these are and how big impact they might have, and how do we measure those in ways that we can use that to kind of be informing decision making and so on. I think that's kind of the heart of the question. It's a bit longer than that. But in relation to risks, like how do you consider risks and how do you measure risks? And if so, how do you think that impacts on the decision makers in cities?
Since I was talking, I think I will just finish. For us in Paris, we have risk maps. So we calculated where are the flood risks. I personally live in an area that is very close to the river, meaning that I am high on the flood risk scheme. We also calculated heat maps through satellite imagery. And so we know which part of the city are at higher risk of flood or higher risk of urban heat island effects. And we try to schedule our interventions in priority in these areas, whether it's de-sealing, whether it's planting more trees, opening new parks. But we do it, this is one aspect of resilience, but another aspect of resilience is also very social. It's where you give access to people to the resources that they need. So we also try to map our efforts in terms of accessibility of these urban green spaces. Yeah, last thing I wanted to tell you maybe is, in green spaces, well, it's a park, but people go there for sports. People go there for health, physical and mental health. And then now we're adding, each time we are adding layers, we are adding the layer of biodiversity and eco-management and events and social interactions. And now we are also adding this new level of crisis management and risk management. So it means that one single space has to answer to all of these needs, and it's quite difficult. It's a real challenge to plan, but it's also the most interesting, I think. Maybe Adrian, if you.
Yes, no, we have similar approach than that with Celeste, with Paris, for example. But we have now, for example, tried to monitoring the temperature from different parks and playgrounds for children. So that means that we have data, real data and with this data we want to have more realistic data, because with the models you can model aside, you have the model, but the model sometimes is not the real, it's not the reality. And with this data, maybe for the future we can have this risk map in order to for example to include the greenery, to put more trees, to have more shade structure for shading, and of course, yes, but heat for Barcelona is very important, because in summer the city is we have the city a place with more than 12 hours in one day with sun, with direct radiation, and of course it's an issue because it's health for the people. So of course.
Yeah, look, fantastic insights. I think that's actually also being written in the chat now, the kind of insights you're giving. Just hand it, Anna or Callie or Zana, are there any other questions you'd like to raise, or do we have other UNP Plus cities in the room? There are so many people here, I can't see who's who, so it's not easy. It's a pack. If we were in a real room, it'd be absolutely packed, I can tell you. So, but
yeah,
this
we
online
do.
room is full.
We do. We have Burgos and Seus representing Belgrade in the room, and you are able to talk. If you would like to contribute, we would love for you to chime in. I mean, obviously the indicators and, how you develop those is a really interesting question for all the cities, because that's a big part of an urban nature plan. But the financing too, like it's different for every city. All the contexts are different.
I think something that
go ahead. Sorry. No,
go for it. Okay, it was something that I would just reflect on, working across cities kind of in Europe, but also around the world. I think you've already picked up that I'm from another part of the world. I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. And in Melbourne, Australia, these risks of a changing climate have been there for quite a while and have grown quite intense in the last couple of decades. So they're a real driver for change in cities. And the science around climate change in Australia is quite advanced around the impacts it's going to have on cities, in particular heat. So it becomes a real political driver of an issue for cities to increase greenery to reduce heat. But another key part of that is that, there is real science there. So that's one part. A second part is a real focus on how you actually do it, the actual implementation, the actual practice of bringing more green into cities and creating cities that integrate better with ecosystems. But there's a third part which is often forgotten or perhaps not thought about enough. And I think the city of Paris does it and Barcelona does it, but they weave in real stories and narratives around green spaces and why it's so fantastic for people and kids and you name it. And you really need to have those stories and narratives about making it exciting and making these public spaces or public-private spaces which are so enjoyable and also something that belong to everybody. This kind of stewardship is so important. So in Melbourne, in the city of Melbourne, they call it, we want to have a city of trees, a city of forests that people love. And they use the word love on purpose because they want people to love trees. And that's a key part of the campaign and a key part of the implementation that happens in that kind of cities. So that's just a bit of a story from me from the other side of the world. What do you say? Do we have any other thoughts? Anna, you're sitting there so quietly. I'd like to bring you back in. Anna, do you have any comments or thoughts or anything else that pops up in this event that you'd like to bring up before we kind of come to a close in about 5 minutes?
Thank you. Anna Bruin, sorry.
No, please, Anna.
Sorry, thank you, because Kelly mentioned that we are here on behalf of the Belgrade team. So yeah, I just wanted to maybe mention that we initiated last year experimenting with involving private companies and foundations in greening of the schoolyards. Of course, we are far away from the greening, the schoolyards program that City of Paris is implementing, but that is kind of an advancement in our local context. And yes, I wanted to say that definitely risk mitigation via greening is extremely important. Belgrade, Serbia, and the Western Balkans in general is more vulnerable to climate change than the European and world average, but it is extremely challenging to implement the strategic climate adaptation and mitigation measures recognized in the national documents and strategies into the local urban regulatory planning. So that's why such framework and practice is extremely valuable for us. Thank you.
Fantastic to hear from you, and thanks for the inputs. Because I think it's Barcelona and Paris are fantastic, but they're rather big international cities, and it's great in this project to be working with cities of different sizes in different parts of Europe. And Europe, I think, has some 20,000 cities, and they're big and they're small, and they're in different parts of the continent, and we need to be working across all these different spaces, which are all kind of unique in their own ways. So it's really good to have your input. Anna Bruin, would you like to say something as well?
I'm happy if we go to the wrap up, because I think we just have a few minutes left. Maybe just to say might be a few questions in the chat that we haven't gotten to answer, but Rosanna has been tracking them and we have them, and we will, in the follow-up from today, make sure to answer as many as we can. So thank you for the strong engagement in today's webinar. So I let you wrap it up with us, Kez.
Absolutely. Yeah, just like Anna said, I mean, I think that, we had over 300 people sign up for this webinar, 100 or so turn up to attend it, and we'll share the film afterward. And I'm sure that will spread to many different people and organizations and cities around Europe. And I think that just speaks a little bit to the interest in urban nature plans, and that the opportunity here, there is so much learning we need to do from each other. So I mean, just the final things we'd like to say is, I mean, within this project, the UNP Plus project, there's a variety of outputs which are available through our website, and more coming this year as we bring the project to a close. And we've also developed this capacity building program, which is available for free through Urban by Nature, and it has, again, a lot of materials in the actual program as it stands. But it will also be developed further through the rest of this year. We'll be developing thematic guides which go into some of these topics that have been raised today, but also further webinars like this. We'd like to have several of these webinars which are kind of interactive with cities and bringing in city voices and so on. So we will have more webinars. There's another webinar next week. If you're interested in spatial planning and urban nature plans, please join us. We'll go into depth about how different cities are working with spatial planning. And then later this, jumping around, I'm not following the slides, but there's a webinar next week. You can find it here. And then we're going to jump back to the other slide, which is later this year. A huge event in Paris in November. It's the MBS Cities Festival. If you're interested in urban nature plans, if you're interested in nature and cities, this is definitely the place to be. It will be our final event for the project. There'll be many great speakers there and many opportunities to learn and to build networks and collaborate. So with that, they say a great meeting is a meeting that finishes on time. So we're 1 minute before we're supposed to end, and I think we'll wrap it up now. Please get in contact with us if you'd like to follow up on any questions. Again, go to our website. You'll find all of our contact details. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts about what we've said today, if you'd like to challenge us on anything, things you think we're not doing or should be doing, please do that as well. Constructive disagreement and constructive discussion is always welcome. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Anna. And thank you to all the support for the people in the background who you don't really see, but are making sure that everything works. And thanks for all the comments. Have a great day.